Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
We didn't talk about it for almost 2 weeks, but it's time. We'll try to add something hopefully productive to this Judge Kavanaugh, Dr. Ford discussion. And the plan for today is I'm going to start by laying out my thoughts. We'll let Lance react to those, and then we'll give him an opportunity, of course, to, I'm sure in his reaction, he'll half transition into his own thoughts. So we'll play it by ear. We'll see how this goes, but of course, no show would be complete without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Glad to be here. Here we go.
Yeah? All right.
Been watching.
So for those of you that might not be as up to date, which I don't want to say I'd find it hard to believe, because I'd like to think that most of you out there who tune in to our program have some higher standards. Not that your standards are low if you've tuned into this, but that it's possible that you may have chosen not to be up to date on it for any number of principled and valid reasons. So we'll start with that. Secondly, I'd like to, before we get into this, just preface with everybody's really, really upset. And, for any number of reasons, right? Regardless of the side you're on. And I just think that hopefully we, Lance and I and all of you fine people at home can keep our conversation about this civil, because obviously that is our mission here at True Chat. So, it's easy to approach an open table on a subject that you don't know a lot about. If you're getting educated on it, and learning about it for the first time. It's a lot harder to approach it if you've already made up your minds. So we're asking that you try to start today and leave your initial decision about this situation at the door and just come to the table with us and talk a little bit. So just a quick update. Yesterday is when Judge Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford gave testimony in regards to her accusation of his sexual misconduct. And of course, there were lots of politicking going on. But my synopsis hopefully is not too long. I don't post very often on social media, which I'm sure some of you out there would like for me to do more often. But yesterday I saw a post from John Umstead, the host of Business is Art. And I respected, what he said. He didn't make it a public post, so I'm not going to share the details of it, but I will share my public reaction to, what he said. I said, I hope that there are other Americans who are as sad tonight as I am. The center has fallen silent. The radical ideology on both sides has convinced us that we must choose a side. What we must choose is respect, dignity, and humility. Those were lacking today. The center must speak up. Our country began with a Declaration of Independence, and it is time that we, as citizens of that country, declare our independence from disgraceful political gamesmanship. I did initially yesterday, I would say I was leaning toward believing Dr. Ford. And that's just full disclosure. And as I listened to her testify first, I think some of that was reinforced. But after having heard Judge Kavanaugh testify, I kind of expected Lance to feel like there might be somebody that I thought didn't seem as genuine or as truthful. And again, my takeaway at the end was that very different, obviously, presentations as you would expect, because you have an accuser and the accused. But nonetheless, I think it would be hard to argue that either one of them were not passionately trying to defend or explain their position. And so with that, I have not come away from this now with a definitive, I believe so-and-so because X, Y, Z. I think that there were a number of good points made both by both of them, but also by the politicians who testified, even though they weren't technically testifying. If you watched, you'd see that they kind of did. And so with that, I guess I'd say that for me, it comes back down to wherever you are on this. Lance and I have talked about before that at least our belief, which is just one way to approach it, because I think there's a strong argument to be made for moral character plays into, whether or not we should factor that into, our political leaders and our government officials. But it kind of comes back to that on this. The reality is that this is very unlikely to ever proceed in a court of law. And as such, we have to allow the vote to happen, because I think it's wrong that Republicans didn't allow the vote to happen before. I don't think it's right for us to now say, we have to stop the vote, because at the end of the day, the system is set up for there to be a vote, and for those who oppose to say nay, and for those who are in favor to say yes. And I think that we have to follow that process, as much as some of us may not like what we feel that process is going to yield. So I'll try to keep it short, because I'm sure there's some other stuff that I'm missing or not including in my thoughts that Lance will help pick out of the woodwork. So to you, sir.
Well, I just don't understand. First of all, I understand your idea for the center has to be strong, but I think also, as True Chat's resident historian, I need to point out that there have been worse days in American government and American politics than this. And to say, oh my gosh, we're falling apart and things are horrible, I think is a great disrespect for all of the horrible things that we've had to endure as a nation. I mean, going back, the early 1800s, we have a vice president who shoots the former Secretary of State, and who is on trial with a person is put on trial by the Supreme Court by a judge who doesn't like the sitting president. We totally disregarded each other's ideas and feelings and fell into a civil war, where we just some of our fellow countrymen decided to break up. Numerous presidents and high politicians who have been assassinated or shot and disrupted our government. So first of all, I think, the idea that this is the blackest eye in the history of our democracy or anything like that, I guess I would dispel. That's my first initial reaction.
Well, I didn't say that.
You didn't. No. Yeah. So I guess I'm giving mine, but
for the people that are trying to make it sound that way.
But that's where I want to start. That, but you did, because you said the center needs to speak. And that's kind of what I'm referring to, is I'm not sure you're almost wishing for something that really has never, for the majority of time in American history, has not existed. A centrist. I mean, we've had the era of good feelings in the 1800s. We've had everybody coming together to fight World War II. We've had, patriotism high after 9/11, but to really feel like, well, the center is going to rule and everybody's going to be nice and the center needs to speak up. I just think when you said that, it's like, I just disagree that that's ever really existed for any extended period of time in American history.
It hasn't in my life.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, as
I guess I'm not trying to claim that it ever has.
As a person of study in history, that's something that I think we want that isn't there. So I am really trying, by what I'm saying, responding to what you said. I'm not sure that that's in your opening, that is something that's really achievable. I also don't know, and this is to you, how you can say both of them are credible. They both can't be telling the truth. So therefore, that to me, I understand why people are saying that. I understand the argument as to why you probably are saying that, but I don't understand how you can listen to two people talk about an event and honestly deep down believe them both. So that's kind of if I'm supposed to stop there, that's kind of my response to what you had to say. Those are the things that I picked out the most that trouble me. And you're not the only person I've heard say those things. So I'm not, really attacking you personally. It's those two ideas that you presented that I really don't agree with, I guess. I mean, not harshly. I'm not upset. I'm not mad. I just think that I don't understand that how, number one, everybody's saying, oh, this is the worst thing. No, this isn't even close to the worst thing that's ever happened in our government. I mean, if you don't even have to study history, just watch C-SPAN a little bit. I mean, but anyway, I'm getting into my viewpoint, but that's what I would have to say about you. Mm-hmm. I respect it. And maybe that's what you mean by center. I mean, I respect your right to have that opinion. I just don't necessarily agree with it on those two counts, especially.
Since I'll try to address a couple things. One is I am in agreement with you for the people who, and a lot of it's the media, just to be fair. I don't think that it's all, that it's even probably primarily the American people. I think it's a lot of, because the media does this, and they say it all the time. This is a historic moment, and this will be one of those times where everybody remembered where they were at, and when they say things like that, it indicates that this is some phenomenon that we've never seen before. And I am of the mind that while, again, in my lifetime, these kind of things haven't been as prevalent where I was old enough to, really appreciate what was happening. It doesn't mean that they haven't happened over our history, and that for people that have been alive longer than me, that they've seen other things that are equally as bad or in many cases significantly worse than this. So I was reflecting on the post I made kind of the rest of the night and through this morning. And I was thinking that I guess I wanted to clarify it a little bit, because I admire a lot of what groups like No Labels, who are, let's work together kind of thing. I admire that ideology more than just the center. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having people who have starkly different ideologies, as long as they are willing to work with the other side. Because all these politicians that were there, they'll tell you they're willing to do that, but it's crap. They're not willing, because nobody really seeded anything. We all had been saying this up until now. We're all saying this through this entire thing, and now we're all going to say it again as we wrap this thing up. So I guess to me, if I could, and I wanted to be honest and share, that was a reactionary, that's what I said within 30 minutes of everything wrapping up last night. And Lance and I talked about, just for full disclosure, recording yesterday and having it up for you guys first thing on Friday. And now instead, this isn't going up until later on the day, Friday. And part of what my thinking was not only let's wait and see, make sure that the vote and nothing crazy happens that would change what we would say, but also that I wanted a little more time to stew on it and think about it, because we often jump to conclusions and then stick with them. And I hope that our show's a place where people listening don't get the sense that we're unchangeable, that there's no chance that we could see a different point. So no, I don't think it's the worst day by any means. I do think it is a sad day, because I think that, as you had kind of pointed out when you came in today, Lance, a lot of Americans who are watching don't realize that this is how their government operates most of the time. That's how they behave most of the time. And that's part of what's sad, is that I wonder if more people knew that that's how it is most of the time, if we might actually get something changed. But it became such a high stakes thing, that people tuned in, and it's great that, people are caring about the political process. But at the same time, it's like, I think they might be caring for reasons that aren't going to transcend today, which is too bad. So, and then the note of, the center rules and the good feeling, I think I mostly addressed that. I mean, I do think it's too bad that there's not more that there's not more people like a John McCain who, again, are they in the center? No, I don't know if anybody's truly in the center, but they're in an area of reason, and it's obvious that they're not always going to vote the same way every time, and probably everybody except maybe one person on that committee, everybody knew going in, they're going to vote this way, and to me, that's kind of what I'm.
Which means then this is the whole
at.
Question. Yeah, you're kind of describing bipartisanship is what I'm.
Yeah,
is what I'm hearing
yes.
you say more than center. Center believers. You're talking about bipartisanship, which I totally agree with that. But I think if that last part that you just said is true, then yesterday was a stage production for the American people, because nothing changed after what we saw yesterday as far as the people on that committee, is what you just said.
Yeah.
And I think you're right.
Which is still why I don't understand why it happened.
So why do we have it?
Yeah.
That was exactly that was going to be my question to you is, I think I agree with that last part you said, that everybody on that committee had pretty much made up their mind except for Senator Flake. At least he was the only one from Arizona who had kind of said, I'm going to listen and see. He hadn't come out before and said what was going to happen. Everybody, the other 10 on each side had both said. And so everybody was waiting to hear what he said. And I think it was at 7:45 this morning. It came on the screen I was watching that said Senator Flake said he's going to vote to confirm in the committee
to recommend to
the full Senate.
Yes.
And so at that point it was done. Now, he at least waited until after yesterday happened.
Right. So even if he had decided, he at least gave the impression
he was
that
the one who gave
really
the impression that yesterday mattered.
Trying to listen. Yeah.
Right.
And that's the.
So then why do all that yesterday
exactly.
to begin with? But that's another question that's really not within the format of what you asked. But you when you brought that up, that's what I'm thinking. Well, I agree with Justin that, I think they'd already all made up their minds. So why did we do yesterday?
Right. Well, I mean, because at the end of the day, what it is to service both parties need to go back to the voters and say, for the Republicans to be able to say, we heard her out, and for the Democrats to say, we fought for her, and there's this thing that's not acknowledged that at the end of the day, I don't know if it's a spoken, and it might be, sorry, little dab of conspiracy here. It might be a spoken truth. But it's probably an unspoken understanding between Democrats and Republicans that their feuding keeps them alive. The people that are there, that their need to do these things keeps them alive. I heard a lady on the radio who said her belief was that the Republicans were the one that leaked the letter. And we're not going to get into that because I don't want to get down in the weeds on, this, that, and the other thing. I'm just saying it was one of those thoughts of don't put it past that there is a level of we want what we want. And in order to get it, we have to work together in the wrong kind of ways. We understand this, we go back and forth and you're going to say your piece and we're going to say ours so that we can go say, look what we did, voters. We did our job, and it's the others that messed up. So there's that. And then the last thing that you mentioned that I guess I will, when I said both credible, because I'll try to expand on this a little bit. The part of the reason I thought it was a sad day is because the reality is, as you pointed out, one of them is lying, and people have said that. And I guess trying to be the analytical, observer and really think critically, I also got back to, well, yes, somebody's lying. Whether or not they know they're lying could be another side of it. And I'm not saying that as a defense for Kavanaugh, I'm really saying it for both of them. Despite what they both said, which is that they're 100% basically certain that he did it and that he didn't do it, it is quite possible that, for example, on her side, that this did happen to her and that it wasn't him, or that he did it and was actually not able to remember it happening. Those are both true possibilities, and that might upset people out there to hear that those are actual, again, whether or not you think they happened, that's a different discussion, but you have to acknowledge that those are within the realm of possibility. I've been to college parties. I'm sure a lot of other people have as well. I've been to high school parties, and I'm sure a lot of other people have been as well. And there are times where you don't remember everything that happened. And obviously some to a worse extent than others. And even adult parties. I'm sorry, let's not, just all stupid kids. There's lots of adults who can't remember what happens, because they indulge too heavily. So it's possible. So I guess that's the last point there. With what I mean is there's not enough information for me to feel like I can definitively say one of them, this one is lying. So therefore, I guess you could also make the argument that I don't find either of them credible because there's not enough, data to go on. That would be the flip side to my thing of you could also make that case, and I could probably agree with you on, because there's no more information, I don't feel good about saying this is who I think is right. I just don't think there's, again, my impression as it stands now, but maybe Lance will sway me or give us something else to think about. So we're back to the floor is yours.
Well, I had three things that I jotted down when you told me about how you want to go about the show. And they are, I'm appalled at three things that I feel happened yesterday and then again this morning. One is just the general lack of leadership within our political base, that nobody wants to lead and be different and truly speak their mind, that everything they had was written ahead, canned, staged for something later. And that kind of leads to my second point, which is it was really frustrating to watch politicians follow the party line and with an eye on their reelection instead of following how they truly feel, which then to me is intertwined with leadership. That if I am a leader, then I am hired, elected, put in, whatever, however I got that position of leadership to make the tough decision. I can't worry about, I shouldn't worry about what my friends think. I shouldn't worry about what my employees think. I shouldn't worry about, yes, those are factors, but when it comes down to it, the times that I have been in a position of leadership, either as a coach or a teacher or within a group of teachers or whatever, or a group of friends, I'm supposed to make the decision that I think is right. I'm not supposed to make the decision that's going to make everybody happy. I'm not supposed to make the decision that is going to make me look good among the most people. I'm not supposed to make the decision that is going to make people give me an attaboy, way to go. You did a great job. I'm supposed to make the right decision. I'm supposed to make the decision that I think truly is the right decision, even if it means a lot of people aren't going to agree with me, but it was the right thing to do. That's what, to me, the definition of leadership has always been and how I've always taught it. Now, when you're in a position of leadership and you think, and the decision that you think is right is the one that makes the majority of the people happy, that's when it's a great time to be a leader. But when you're in that position of leadership, that shouldn't be the major factor. The major factor ought to be doing what is right. And I just felt like yesterday I was watching 21 members, 20% of our leadership in the Senate, 21% of our leadership, who were all following party lines, who were all saying what they were saying in some part in making sure they win re-election for their seat, either in the upcoming midterms or because the Senate is, 1/3 every 2 years because they have 6 years. So at some point they're all going to run for re-election, or they're all representing a political PAC, or they're all representing some lobbyists who are feeding them money or funneling them money or their family money or their family jobs or whatever. And you're like, oh my gosh, that goes on. That seemed to be their impetus, not let's figure out what's best when we think about appointing a person to a job that has no election status. That if we mess up here on this Kavanaugh thing, and I'm not saying we are, because I don't know what the decision is. They're going to vote while we're on air probably, or at least they're supposed to.
Yeah.
But if we mess up one way or the other, if we don't confirm him, and he could have been one of the best jurists in America, and he is innocent, and he hasn't lied to anybody, then that's a mess up. Or if he is a habitual liar and, he can't tell the truth, we're going to put like somebody that on the Supreme. There's no recourse once they get there. I mean, if we find out things after the fact, there's really not any recourse. Yes, there's impeachment proceedings. I can think of one time that happened in Supreme Court history, and I'm not an aficionado, so please don't, call in and say, oh, there's been 4 times. Okay, I believe you. But I can only think of one time in my study of history where I read about the impeachment of a Supreme Court justice. Those are my first 2. My third one is I thought Judge Kavanaugh yesterday did a great impersonation of Donald Trump, and I'm saddened that he won points for it because it shows more of the political mainstream that we live in, that you can attack people who are questioning you, and then people think you're something good. You win points for that. Donald Trump attacked women. Donald Trump attacked the other Republican leaders that ran against him in the primaries for the Republican nomination. And he gained respect for that. People liked him because of that. People say, well, I didn't like him for that. I voted for him for. Okay. You still put up with that. Well, Judge Kavanaugh came out and attacked all Democrats, attacked our senators that were sitting there for their disagreeing with him. He even came after one senator when they asked about his blackout drinking. And instead of answering the question, well, do you drink to where you black out? I mean, if that had happened in his courtroom, they'd have been hauled off for contempt of court. You don't talk respectfully to another human being that way. If you're going to sit on the highest jury of the land where you're supposed to read the Constitution and take the people's well-being into thought. And so those are the 3, I would say, disappointments and the 3 takeaways that I had from yesterday's events.
Okay.
And this morning is just the lack of general leadership, politicians making every statement based on, I have to get reelected. And the fact that Judge Kavanaugh, to me, sounded like Donald Trump, and he's gaining support because of that. And I had hoped that maybe the country was more sickened of President Trump's antics, of his leadership style, than that. I'm not saying he hasn't gotten some things done as president. I'm saying of that style where you can attack your accusers, where you can attack people that disagree with you, and your status rises.
So the first 2 points, the lack of leadership and the follow party lines instead of, speaking their truth and their mind. I agree. They both kind of wrap up into leadership, because being a good leader is not doing what is popular, but doing what is right. And of course, we've had many of our greatest leaders who have echoed that same sentiment, where they did things, they didn't just say it, they demonstrated that they didn't care. Everybody, probably one of the most famous examples, right? Everybody thinks that Lincoln was so wonderful today, but people forget that many hated him at that time, probably more than liked him. For not because they all thought that slavery should stay, but because of the way he handled things.
There were times he threw the Constitution away,
right,
and violated people's constitutional rights.
We all ignore that, but he suspended, without real legal ability to do so, many rights at different times that in his view, that was the quote unquote right thing to do, as opposed to the legal or the popular thing that should be done.
He felt those actions were necessary to keep the country together.
Right. He thought that the thing that was right was more important than what people would be okay with. And then thereby acted on those things, didn't just say, didn't just speak, but actually did things to show that. So yeah, I can't agree more with those. And I think those kind of even wrap up into the third thing, because I will say that, you know, and I can't say anything really about the Republicans on this, because since they deferred their questioning of Dr. Ford to a third party, you know, they didn't obviously they didn't question her in a way that was disrespectful, because they weren't the ones doing the questioning. So they have that out. I think that I was displeased with the gotcha attitude of the politicians when they were questioning Kavanaugh from the left, because that is what, you know, they were actively hoping to mostly testify and then get him to say something, you know, and avoid any justification for his answers, because the justification would thereby make what they were trying to get him to say less valid. So that was upsetting. But at the end of the day, I think what I would say is they have the right to do that. That is the way Republicans would have the right too. You know, they're concerned about optics, so they bring in this third party, but they had the right to question her and to grill her. They had that right. And she had the right not to show up. You know what I mean? We're all forgetting that there are lots of voluntary actions taking place. But at the end of the day, if you agree to appear before that committee and, you know, swear an oath to tell the truth, they have the right to ask you anything. So this whole idea that, you know, some questions were out of bounds or were too far or this or that. No, I mean, that's how the process works. That's the point of this committee, is to ask those tough questions. And so, yes, you might be uncomfortable, but part of what is being asked is in an attempt to determine your demeanor and your character. Both of those, you know, looking to be confirmed, and those who are witnesses, because those things should help. Again, as we, I think, have both pointed out, in this case, many of them had their minds made up ahead of time, pretty much all of them. But what it should be is those should be things that help you make the decision. You know, if a witness is of a bad character, or if a nominee is of a bad character, those things could be relevant, you know, to whether or not you believe what they're saying. So I agree on the, I guess I wouldn't say I agree on that point, because I guess it's a little different. I think that he became unrestrained in some ways that were disrespectful beyond what they should have been. And that kind of harkens back to your first point, the lack of leadership. The committee chair should jump in, you know? I mean, for both sides, he let people ask questions longer than they were supposed to, both Democrats and Republicans. He let people talk over each other. And I'm sorry, but as somebody who studied parliamentary procedure and competed at it, that is not how that works, you know? The whole reason that those procedures exist is to keep it respectful. So sorry, we're basically out of time. So if you got anything you want to add quickly, Lance.
No, I appreciate that. Again, those are just my takeaways.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't get into necessarily what I think should happen. That's not my decision. I'm not one of the 100 voting senators. I do have my own feelings, and if we do a show and you want me to share those, I will. But that was, as I spent all of yesterday morning and most of yesterday afternoon until I had to leave to go to work, those were my major takeaways, you know, and the things I saw this morning. And those are my disappointments, and that we're not being more, we just don't have any leadership.
Yeah.
My key
leadership and respect.
Even if I don't agree with my leaders, I respect good leaders.
Yeah.
And that's I guess my final statement on the state of affairs. And this just being another example of what we're dealing with right now in the United States as far as leadership is concerned, is I just want some good, strong leadership. Sorry.
No,
I thought I was quicker than that. I saw I had 1:07. I thought I was quicker than that. I can pick up with good, strong, you know, I just want some good, strong.
No, you made it in okay. It was, I just obviously have
so that you can do the close. I mean, if
Yeah.
it's okay so that you can pick up and add the closing in there. Okay.
I guess the last thought I would add and leave people with is also while it may have not been the way a nominee should act, part of the credibility thing I was talking about before, and the reason that I don't feel confident in saying I believe one of them over the other, is I would imagine that, again, wipe the slate clean here for a moment and forget the people we're talking about. If you were accused of something like that and you didn't do it, it would be very difficult to maintain composure under intense questioning. I think many people would break. But at the same token, you have to ask yourself, we're talking about the highest court in the land. So is there a higher standard? And if so, is that part of that standard? And I don't mean that as a rhetorical question. I'm honestly asking all of you to try to answer it, because that's the last little bit I'll say there. Is I forgot to mention that before, but I think that's relevant to, most people in that situation would break, and they would get emotional. So I think that we have to take into consideration, where does that fit with what you want in a Supreme Court nominee? Let us know your thoughts at TrueChat.org, Twitter, Facebook, and more. And the goal, as I think Lance kind of touched on, was really to share our analysis, less so whether or not we think he should be confirmed to the court, because that wasn't what we were talking about. We were trying to echo TrueChat's mission of educating people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversation. And I think we did a pretty good job of that today. So, and if you don't, ethics@truechat.org is the place to go. And of course, you can listen to our podcasts anywhere that fine podcasts are found. For The State of Us on TrueChat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
And I'm Lance Jackson.
Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on The State of Us. Be the change.
Looking for responsible media? Listen on demand to politics, sports, and more with the True Chat app or at truechat.org. Beyond the horizon, there is trustworthy media at True Chat.